Think faster and speak clearer. The 3-2-1 speaking trick that forces you to stop rambling. A personal growth audiobook. Introduction. Think about the last time someone asked you a question and you struggled to answer clearly. Maybe it happened in a meeting. Someone asked for your opinion, and suddenly your mind felt blank. You started explaining, but your words came out messy and unorganized. You talked, and talked, and talked. Halfway through your explanation, you could feel it happening. You were rambling. You repeated yourself. You added unnecessary details. You tried to fix your explanation while you were still speaking. And when you finally finished, the room felt quiet in that awkward way that makes you wonder, did that even make sense? Most people know this feeling. It happens in meetings, interviews, conversations with friends, presentations, and even simple situations like answering a question at work. Someone asks you something simple, but instead of giving a clear answer, you begin wandering through your thoughts, trying to find the right words while you're already speaking. And the more you talk, the more unclear your message becomes. This is the problem most people have with communication. Not a lack of intelligence. Not a lack of knowledge. The real problem is disorganized thinking. When your thoughts are disorganized, your words will be disorganized. When your mind jumps from idea to idea, your explanation will jump from point to point. And that is exactly what rambling is. Rambling is not a speaking problem. Rambling is a thinking problem. But here's the good news. Clear speaking is not a talent you're born with. It's a skill you can train. And in this audiobook, you're going to learn a simple technique that can transform the way you think and communicate. It's called the 3-2-1 speaking trick. The hidden reason people ramble. Most people believe that speaking clearly requires confidence. They assume that confident people simply have a natural ability to speak well. But confidence is not the real cause. In reality, clear speakers do something different before they speak. They quickly organize their thoughts. Even if it only takes a second, they subconsciously structure what they want to say. Their brain asks a quick question. What is my main point? Then they support that point with a few ideas. Because of this, their message sounds structured and easy to follow. But most people skip this step completely. Instead of organizing their thoughts first, they begin speaking immediately and try to figure out what they mean while they are talking. Imagine trying to build a house while you're already living inside it. That's what most conversations look like. You start explaining before the structure exists. So your brain keeps searching for ideas while your mouth keeps producing words. This creates the classic signs of rambling. Long explanations, repeated ideas, unnecessary details, losing your main point, talking just to avoid silence. And ironically, the more you talk, the less clear your message becomes. The listener begins to feel confused. Your point gets buried under too many words. And what could have been said in 15 seconds takes 2 minutes instead. This is why clear communicators often appear more intelligent, confident, and persuasive. Not because they know more, but because they organize their thoughts before they speak. And that's exactly what you're about to learn. The power of simple structure. Your brain loves structure. In fact, structure is the fastest way to turn messy thoughts into clear communication. Think about how stories work. Good stories follow a structure. Beginning, middle, end. Speeches often follow a structure. Point, example, conclusion. Even jokes follow structure. Setup, build up, punchline. Structure makes ideas easy to understand. Without structure, everything becomes noise. Now imagine applying a simple structure to every conversation you have. What if you could organize your thoughts in just a few seconds? What if you always knew exactly how to answer a question clearly? What if you could stop yourself from rambling before it even started? That's where the 3-2-1 speaking trick comes in. The 3-2-1 speaking trick. The method you'll learn in this audiobook is incredibly simple. Before you speak, you organize your thoughts using 3 quick steps. 3 key ideas. 2 supporting points. 1 clear message. That's it. Instead of trying to say everything at once, you quickly build a mental structure. You decide, what are the 3 main ideas? What are 2 supporting details if needed? What is the one clear message I want the listener to remember? This structure forces your brain to focus. Instead of speaking randomly, your explanation becomes intentional. Your words become shorter. Your ideas become clearer. And most importantly, you stop rambling. What used to take 2 minutes can now be said in 20 seconds. Why this method works so well? The 3-2-1 method works because it matches how people naturally process information. Human attention is limited. When someone listens to you speak, they can only remember a small number of ideas. If you overwhelm them with too many details, they lose track of your point. But when your message follows a simple structure, it becomes easy to follow. Your listener feels guided through your explanation instead of lost inside it. Think of it like giving someone directions. Imagine someone asking how to get to a cafe. A rambling answer might sound like this. Well, you go down this road, and then you'll see a gas station, and actually before that there's a traffic light, and sometimes there's construction there, and then after that you turn somewhere near a supermarket. Confusing. But a clear answer might sound like this. 3 steps, go straight for 2 blocks, turn right at the gas station, and the cafe is on the corner. Same information. But one version is clear and structured. That's the power of organized thinking. The real goal of this audiobook. This audiobook is not about turning you into a perfect public speaker. It's about giving you a mental tool you can use in everyday situations. Because communication affects almost every part of life. Your ability to speak clearly can influence job interviews, meetings at work, leadership opportunities, presentations, networking, conversations, relationships, everyday discussions. When you communicate clearly, people understand you faster. They trust your ideas more. They respect your opinions. And they are far more likely to listen to what you say. Clear communication creates influence. And influence creates opportunity. But the most powerful change happens internally. When you know you can organize your thoughts and express yourself clearly, something shifts inside you. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop worrying about sounding foolish. Instead, you speak with calm clarity. Not because you memorized scripts, but because your thinking has become structured. And when your thinking becomes structured, your speaking becomes powerful. What you will learn. In the chapters ahead, you will learn practical skills that transform the way you communicate. In Chapter 1, we will explore why most people ramble when they speak and the psychological habits that cause unclear communication. In Chapter 2, you will discover how clear thinking automatically leads to clear speaking. In Chapter 3, we will break down the 3-2-1 speaking trick step by step so you can apply it immediately. In Chapter 4, you will learn techniques to train your brain to think faster in conversations. In Chapter 5, you will discover simple frameworks for structuring your thoughts in seconds. In Chapter 6, we will focus on speaking with confidence and precision without over-explaining. In Chapter 7, you will learn how to apply the 3-2-1 method in real-life situations like meetings, interviews, presentations, and everyday conversations. And in Chapter 8, we will explore how mastering clear communication can transform your confidence, influence, and success. A small habit that changes everything. Before we move to the first chapter, here is a simple idea to keep in mind. Clear communication doesn't require complicated techniques. It starts with a tiny pause. Just one moment before you speak. A moment to ask yourself, what is my main point? That small pause is where clarity begins. Because when you think for a second before speaking, you give your brain the chance to organize your thoughts. And that single habit can completely change how people experience your words. By the end of this audiobook, you will have a simple system that helps you do exactly that. A system that helps you think faster, speak clearer, and stop rambling. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why most people ramble when they speak. Have you ever started explaining something and realized halfway through that you were completely lost in your own words? Maybe someone asked a simple question, and instead of giving a clear answer, you started talking in circles. You added extra details that weren't necessary. You repeated the same point in different ways. You tried to clarify your explanation while you were still speaking. And after a minute or two, even you weren't sure what your main point was anymore. This is rambling. Almost everyone does it. You hear it in meetings. You hear it in presentations. You hear it in interviews. You hear it in everyday conversations. Someone begins speaking with good intentions, but their explanation slowly becomes messy, long, and confusing. But here's something important to understand. People rarely ramble because they don't know what they're talking about. Most of the time, they ramble because their thoughts are unorganized. And when your thoughts are unorganized, your words will be too. To understand how to fix rambling, we first need to understand why it happens in the first place. The brain under pressure. One of the biggest reasons people ramble is pressure. When someone asks you a question, your brain immediately feels the need to respond. Silence suddenly feels uncomfortable. So instead of taking a moment to think, you start talking immediately. Your brain begins searching for ideas while your mouth is already producing words. It's like trying to write a book while reading it out loud at the same time. Your thoughts haven't finished forming yet, but you're already explaining them. This creates confusion both for you and for the person listening. Imagine someone asking you this question in a meeting. What do you think we should do about the project deadline? You probably have an opinion, but if you answer too quickly, your response might sound like this. Well, I think maybe we should. It depends on the timeline, because last time we had a similar situation where the team had to adjust things, and also the client expectations are important. Notice what's happening. Your brain is trying to organize your thoughts while you're speaking, so your explanation becomes messy. But if you paused for just a few seconds before answering, your response might sound very different. I see 3 options. We can extend the deadline, reduce the scope, or add more resources to the team. Clear. Structured. Easy to understand. The difference isn't intelligence. The difference is thinking before speaking. The fear of saying the wrong thing. Another reason people ramble is fear. Many people are afraid of sounding wrong, incomplete, or unintelligent. So they try to cover every possible angle. Instead of giving a clear point, they keep adding more information. They explain too much. They justify every idea. They keep talking because they believe more words will make their message stronger. But the opposite is usually true. More words often create more confusion. Imagine asking someone a simple question like, "Do you think this idea will work?" A rambling answer might sound like this. "Well, I think it could work in some situations, but it also depends on the market conditions, and sometimes these strategies take time, and there are always different variables to consider." By the time the explanation ends, you still don't know the person's opinion. Now imagine a clear answer. "Yes, I think it can work, but we need to focus on 2 things, timing and execution." Short, direct, confident. People often assume that confident speakers know more, but usually they just say less and say it clearly. The habit of thinking out loud. Some people ramble simply because they are used to thinking out loud. Instead of organizing their ideas internally, they process their thoughts verbally. You've probably heard someone do this before. They begin a sentence without knowing how it will end. Their explanation slowly unfolds as they figure things out in real time. For example, "Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, maybe the problem is that we started the campaign too early, or actually maybe the audience targeting wasn't right." What you're hearing is someone thinking out loud. There's nothing wrong with this in casual conversation. But in professional situations, it can make you appear uncertain. Clear communicators usually do something different. They think silently for a moment. Then they deliver their message with structure. It might only take 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds create clarity. Too many ideas at once. Another reason people ramble is simple. They try to say everything at once. When you have multiple ideas in your mind, it can feel tempting to share all of them. But when too many ideas appear at the same time, the listener struggles to follow your message. Imagine someone explaining a new project like this. "So the goal of this project is to improve our marketing results, but we also want to redesign the website, and we're thinking about launching a podcast, and there's also a new partnership opportunity." This explanation jumps between ideas. The listener doesn't know what the main point is. But a structured version might sound like this. "This project has 3 goals: improve our marketing results, redesign the website, and explore new partnerships. Now the listener understands instantly. The difference is structure. Without structure, ideas feel chaotic. With structure, ideas become powerful. The desire to fill silence. Silence can feel uncomfortable in conversations, especially in professional environments. When someone asks you a question and you pause to think, it can feel like everyone is waiting. So people rush to fill the silence. They start speaking immediately, even if their thoughts are incomplete. But here's something important to remember. A short pause makes you look thoughtful, not awkward. In fact, some of the most confident speakers intentionally pause before answering. That pause signals control. It tells the listener that you are thinking carefully about your response. Great communicators are comfortable with silence. They use it as a tool. Instead of rushing to fill every moment with words, they allow space for clear thinking. The myth of talking more. Many people believe that strong communicators talk a lot. But if you listen carefully to great speakers, you'll notice something interesting. They rarely talk more than necessary. Instead, they focus on clarity. Their explanations are simple. Their ideas are structured. Their words are intentional. They understand something that most people overlook. Communication is not about saying more. It's about making your message easier to understand. When your message is clear, you don't need many words. One sentence can sometimes be more powerful than a long explanation. How rambling affects your influence. Rambling doesn't just make conversations confusing. It also affects how people perceive you. When someone speaks in a disorganized way, listeners may assume the speaker is unsure, the speaker is unprepared, the speaker doesn't fully understand the topic. Even if none of those things are true. On the other hand, when someone speaks clearly and directly, people often assume the speaker is confident, the speaker is intelligent, the speaker understands the subject well. Again, this has very little to do with actual intelligence. It has everything to do with how ideas are structured. Clear communication signals clear thinking, and clear thinking commands respect. A simple awareness exercise. Before learning new techniques, the first step is awareness. Start paying attention to how people speak around you. Notice when someone rambles. You'll begin to recognize the patterns. They may repeat the same point several times, jump between ideas, add unnecessary details, lose their main message. Then notice the opposite. Pay attention to people who communicate clearly. They often do three things. They pause briefly before speaking. They organize their ideas. They deliver their message in a simple structure. This is exactly what you will learn to do. The good news about rambling. If you struggle with rambling, don't worry. It's not a personality flaw. It's simply a habit. And like any habit, it can be replaced. The key is learning how to organize your thoughts quickly. Once you do that, speaking clearly becomes much easier. Because when your thinking becomes structured, your words naturally follow. You no longer need to search for what to say while you're speaking. Instead, your message already has direction. This is where the method you'll learn in this audiobook becomes powerful. A simple structure that organizes your thoughts before you speak. A structure that prevents rambling before it even begins. A structure that allows you to communicate ideas with clarity and confidence. In the next chapter, we'll explore something important. You'll discover why clear thinking automatically creates clear speaking, and how training your mind to organize ideas will transform the way you communicate in every area of your life. Chapter 2. How clear thinking creates clear speaking. Most people believe that speaking clearly is about choosing the right words. But in reality, the words you use are only the final step of communication. Before words come thoughts. And if your thoughts are messy, your words will be messy too. Imagine trying to pour water from a container. If the container is steady and organized, the water flows smoothly. But if the container is shaking and unstable, the water spills everywhere. Your mind works the same way. When your thinking is organized, your speaking flows naturally. When your thinking is scattered, your words come out confused. This is why the most powerful communication skill is not speaking. It is thinking clearly before you speak. Once you understand this idea, everything about communication becomes easier. Speaking is the result of thinking. Many people try to improve their communication by focusing only on speaking techniques. They try to sound more confident. They practice using stronger vocabulary. They learn presentation skills. All of those things can help, but none of them solve the real problem if your thinking is still disorganized. Because speaking is simply the output of your thinking. If the input is messy, the output will be messy. Think about a time when you truly understood something deeply. Maybe it was a skill you had mastered, a topic you knew well, or an idea you had thought about carefully. When someone asked you about it, explaining it felt easy. Your words flowed naturally. Your explanation made sense. Why? Because your thinking was already clear. You didn't need to search for ideas while speaking. The ideas were already organized in your mind. Clear thinking creates clear speaking. The hidden pause that great communicators use. If you observe great communicators carefully, you'll notice something interesting. They rarely rush into an answer. Instead, they pause. Sometimes the pause is only 1 second, but that moment is extremely powerful. During that short pause, their brain is doing something important. It is organizing thoughts. They are deciding, what is the main point? What information matters most? What should I say first? This tiny moment of organization creates clarity. Most people skip this step completely. They begin speaking immediately. But the best communicators understand something simple. Thinking for a moment saves time later. Without that pause, you may spend 2 minutes explaining something poorly. With the pause, you may say the same thing clearly in 20 seconds. Why the brain loves structure. Your brain is incredibly powerful, but it also has limits. When you try to explain something without structure, your brain must do several things at the same time. Generate ideas, choose the right words, organize the information, monitor the listener's reaction. That's a lot of mental work happening simultaneously. Without structure, your brain becomes overloaded. That overload leads to rambling. But structure simplifies everything. When you organize your thoughts into clear points, your brain can focus on delivering the message instead of searching for it. Structure acts like a roadmap. It tells your mind exactly where the explanation is going. This is why structured speakers sound calm and confident. Their brain isn't scrambling to find the next idea. They already know the direction of their message. The power of one clear point. One of the biggest mistakes people make in communication is trying to share too many ideas at once. They want to explain everything. They want to include every detail. They want to make sure nothing is left out. But great communicators do something different. They focus on one clear point at a time. Imagine someone asking you this question. What did you think about the presentation? A rambling response might sound like this. Well, I think the presentation was interesting, and the slides looked good, but maybe the explanation could have been shorter, and also the examples were helpful, although the introduction felt a bit long. The listener struggles to follow the message. But a clear response might sound like this. The presentation was strong overall, but it would be even better if the introduction were shorter. One clear point. Easy to understand. When your thinking focuses on a single idea, your speaking automatically becomes clearer. Clarity is simplicity. Another important principle of clear thinking is simplicity. Many people assume that sounding intelligent requires complex explanations. But the opposite is usually true. The smartest communicators often explain ideas in the simplest way possible. Think about the best teachers you've ever had. They didn't make things complicated. They made things clear. They took complex ideas and broke them into simple pieces. Clear thinkers naturally simplify ideas. Not because the ideas are simple, but because they understand them deeply. Confusion creates complicated explanations. Clarity creates simple ones. Organizing thoughts before speaking. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine a coworker asking you this question. Why do you think our last marketing campaign didn't perform well? Without organizing your thoughts, you might answer like this. Well, there were several things that might have affected it. The timing could have been part of the issue, and the audience targeting might not have been ideal, and also the messaging may not have been clear enough. Your explanation becomes long and uncertain. But if you organize your thoughts first, you might say, I think the campaign struggled for 3 reasons: timing, audience targeting, and unclear messaging. Immediately, your explanation sounds structured. The listener knows exactly what to expect. You can then briefly explain each point. The difference again is not intelligence. The difference is organization. Mental clarity creates verbal confidence. When your thoughts are organized, something interesting happens. Your confidence increases. Why? Because you know exactly what you're going to say. Uncertainty often comes from confusion in our own minds. When we're unsure about our ideas, we hesitate. We speak cautiously. We over-explain. But when your thoughts are clear, your delivery becomes natural. You don't feel the need to fill space with unnecessary words. You simply express the idea. This is why clear thinking doesn't just improve communication. It also improves confidence. You trust your message because you understand it. A simple thinking habit. One of the easiest ways to improve your communication is to develop a small thinking habit before speaking. Whenever someone asks you a question, ask yourself one quick mental question. What is the main point I want to say? That single question forces your brain to organize information. Instead of sharing random thoughts, you focus on the central idea. Once the main point is clear, the rest of the explanation becomes easier. Everything you say supports that point. Without a main point, your explanation has no direction. With a main point, your message becomes focused. The difference between talking and communicating. Many people believe they are communicating when they are actually just talking. Talking is simply producing words. Communication is delivering a message that another person can clearly understand. You can talk for 5 minutes and still fail to communicate your idea. But you can communicate powerfully in just a few sentences if your message is clear. This is why great communicators are not necessarily the most talkative people. They are the most intentional with their words. They speak with purpose. Every sentence moves the message forward. Training your mind for clarity. Clear thinking is not something you either have or don't have. It's a skill that improves with practice. The more you train your brain to organize ideas, the faster it becomes. Eventually, the process happens almost automatically. You begin to recognize patterns. You quickly identify the main idea. You naturally structure your explanation. This is exactly what the 3-2-1 speaking trick will help you do. It provides a simple mental structure your brain can use in almost any conversation. Instead of struggling to organize ideas in real time, you will have a clear framework. A framework that guides your thinking before you speak. The bridge to clear communication. At this point, you now understand something that many people overlook. Clear speaking begins with clear thinking. If your mind is organized, your message becomes organized. If your thoughts have structure, your words will too. But knowing this idea is only the first step. The real transformation happens when you apply a specific method. A method that helps you organize your thoughts quickly, even in the middle of a conversation. A method that prevents rambling before it begins. A method that turns scattered thoughts into clear communication. In the next chapter, you will learn the heart of this audiobook. A simple but powerful framework that can transform the way you speak. The 3-2-1 speaking trick. Once you understand this method, you'll have a tool you can use in meetings, interviews, presentations, and everyday conversations. A tool that helps you think faster, speak clearer, and communicate with confidence. Chapter 3. The 3-2-1 speaking trick explained. Imagine being asked a question in a meeting and answering with complete clarity in less than 20 seconds. No rambling. No awkward pauses in the middle of your sentence. No losing your point halfway through the explanation. Just a clear, structured answer that people immediately understand. That is exactly what the 3-2-1 speaking trick helps you do. It is one of the simplest ways to organize your thoughts quickly and speak with clarity in almost any situation. You can use it in conversations, meetings, presentations, interviews, and even everyday discussions with friends. And the best part is this. The entire method happens inside your mind in just a few seconds. Once you learn it, It becomes a mental habit that naturally organizes your thinking before you speak. Let's break it down. The 3-2-1 speaking trick. The method is simple. 3 key ideas. 2 supporting points. 1 clear message. This structure acts like a mental blueprint for communication. Instead of speaking randomly and hoping your explanation makes sense, you quickly build a simple structure in your mind. Think of it as creating a mini outline before you speak. Your brain organizes your thoughts into 3 layers. First, the big ideas. Second, the supporting details. Third, the core message. This process only takes a moment, but it completely transforms the way your words come out. Let's explore each part of the method in detail. Step 1. Identify 3 key ideas. The first step is to quickly identify 3 main ideas related to what you want to say. Why 3? Because the human brain naturally processes information best in small groups. 3 ideas feel complete but not overwhelming. You'll notice this pattern everywhere. Stories often have 3 parts. Speeches often include 3 main points. Even simple explanations often use 3 steps. 3 ideas create structure. More than 3 often creates confusion. For example, imagine someone asks, "Why do you think this project will succeed?" Without structure, you might respond like this. "Well, I think the team is good, and we've done similar projects before, and the market conditions seem right, and the strategy is strong." You may continue adding points until your explanation feels scattered. But using the 3-2-1 method, you quickly identify 3 key ideas. The team is experienced, the strategy is proven, the timing is right. Now your explanation already has structure before you even begin speaking. You might say, "I think this project will succeed for 3 reasons. The team is experienced, the strategy is proven, and the timing is right." Clear, organized, easy to follow. The listener now understands exactly what you're about to explain. Why this step stops rambling. When you identify 3 ideas first, something important happens. Your brain stops searching for endless information. Instead of trying to include everything you know, you focus on the most important points. This prevents your explanation from expanding endlessly. It forces you to prioritize. And prioritizing ideas is one of the most powerful communication skills you can develop. Great communicators don't say everything. They say what matters most. Step 2. Add 2 supporting points. Once your 3 key ideas are clear, the next step is optional but powerful. You add 2 supporting points if the explanation requires more detail. Supporting points help clarify your ideas without overwhelming the listener. They answer questions like, "Why is this true? How does this work? What evidence supports this idea?" But the key here is simplicity. You don't add 5 explanations. You don't add 10 details. You choose 1 or 2 useful pieces of information that strengthen your message. For example, imagine someone asking, "Why do you think our product will stand out in the market?" Using the 3-2-1 method, you might think, 3 ideas. The product solves a real problem, the design is simple and user-friendly, the price is competitive. Then you add 2 supporting details. You might say, "Our product stands out for 3 reasons. First, it solves a real problem people face every day. Second, the design is extremely simple to use. And third, the price is lower than most competitors." Then you briefly support 1 or 2 points. For example, during testing, most users were able to start using it in less than a minute. Notice how the explanation remains structured. The supporting detail strengthens the idea without turning the explanation into a long speech. Step 3. Deliver 1 clear message. The final step is the most important. Every explanation should lead to 1 clear message. This is the central takeaway you want the listener to remember. Without a clear message, your explanation may feel interesting but directionless. Think about watching a movie without an ending. Even if the scenes were entertaining, you would still feel something was missing. Communication works the same way. Your listener wants to know the conclusion, the point, the final idea that ties everything together. Using the 3-2-1 method, your explanation ends with a clear statement. For example, Our product stands out for 3 reasons. It solves a real problem, it's extremely easy to use, and it's competitively priced. That's why I believe it has strong potential in the market. Now your message is complete. Your listener understands not only the ideas but also your conclusion. The 3-2-1 trick in action. Let's see how the method works in a real-life situation. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone asks, "What should we focus on improving next quarter?" Without structure, your response might sound like this. "Well, there are a lot of things we could improve. Marketing is important, but customer support also needs attention, and maybe we should also invest in better tools." This explanation feels scattered, but using the 3-2-1 method, you organize your thoughts quickly. 3 ideas. Improve marketing, reach, strengthen customer support, improve internal tools. Then you deliver the answer clearly. I think we should focus on 3 areas next quarter: expanding our marketing reach, strengthening customer support, and improving the internal tools our team uses. Then you add brief support if needed. The difference is powerful. Instead of sounding uncertain, you sound organized and decisive. Why the method works so well? The 3-2-1 speaking trick works because it solves the 2 biggest causes of rambling: too many ideas and no structure. By limiting yourself to 3 ideas, you simplify your thinking. By adding only a few supporting points, you prevent your explanation from becoming overloaded. And by ending with one clear message, you ensure your listener understands the point. This method works with the natural limits of human attention. People remember structured ideas far more easily than random information. So when you speak using the structure, your ideas become easier to understand and easier to remember. Using the method in everyday conversations. You don't need a formal presentation to use the 3-2-1 trick. It works in everyday conversations too. Imagine a friend asking, "Why do you like that book so much?" Instead of rambling, you might say, "I like it for 3 reasons. The ideas are practical, the stories are engaging, and the writing style is very clear." That's the structure. Then you can add a quick example. Or imagine someone asking, "What did you learn from that conference?" Your response could be, "I learned 3 key things: the importance of clear communication, the value of building strong teams, and the power of simple systems." Again, simple, clear, memorable. Practicing the 3-2-1 method. Like any skill, the 3-2-1 method becomes stronger with practice. At first, you may need to think about it consciously. But over time, your brain will begin to organize ideas this way automatically. A simple exercise can help you build this habit. At the end of each day, try explaining something you learned using the 3-2-1 structure. For example, 3 ideas you learned that day. 2 details that made them interesting. 1 key takeaway. You can even practice silently in your mind during conversations. Whenever someone asks a question, quickly think, "What are the 3 most important ideas here?" Even if you don't say all 3, the act of organizing your thoughts will make your response clearer. A skill that changes everything. The 3-2-1 speaking trick may seem simple, but simple structures often create powerful results. This method trains your brain to think in organized patterns. Instead of speaking randomly, your ideas begin forming in clear frameworks. Over time, something remarkable happens. You start noticing the difference in how people respond to you. They understand your ideas faster. They listen more closely. They ask better follow-up questions. And your communication begins to feel effortless. Not because you memorized scripts, but because your thinking has become structured. And when your thinking becomes structured, your speaking becomes powerful. In the next chapter, we'll build on the skill by exploring something equally important. You'll learn practical techniques for training your brain to think faster in conversations. Because the faster your mind can organize ideas, the more confident and clear your communication becomes. Chapter 4. Training your brain to think faster. Have you ever been asked a question and thought of the perfect answer 10 minutes later? It happens all the time. Someone asks you something in a meeting, a conversation, or an interview. In that moment, your mind feels slow. Your thoughts feel scattered. You say something simple, or sometimes something unclear. Then later, when the conversation is over, the perfect explanation suddenly appears in your mind. You think, "Why didn't I say that?" This happens because your brain wasn't prepared to organize ideas quickly. Thinking fast is not about intelligence. It's about mental training. Your brain, like any other part of your body, becomes stronger with practice. Just as athletes train their muscles to move quickly and efficiently, you can train your mind to organize thoughts faster and more clearly. And when your brain becomes faster at organizing ideas, something powerful happens. Your responses become clearer. Your confidence grows. Your communication becomes effortless. In this chapter, you will learn practical techniques that train your brain to think faster in conversations so you can apply the 3-2-1 speaking method naturally and confidently. Why your brain sometimes feels slow. Before we talk about improving mental speed, it's important to understand why thinking sometimes feels slow in conversations. Your brain processes an incredible amount of information every second. When someone asks you a question, your mind instantly begins doing several things at once. Understanding the question, searching for relevant ideas, organizing those ideas, choosing the right words, monitoring the listener's reaction. That's a lot of mental activity happening at the same time. If your brain is not used to organizing ideas quickly, it can feel overwhelmed. When that happens, two common things occur. Some people freeze and struggle to find words. Other people ramble while trying to figure out their thoughts out loud. Both reactions come from the same problem. The brain is trying to organize information too quickly without a system. But once you train your mind to organize ideas efficiently, thinking becomes much faster. The power of mental frameworks. One of the easiest ways to speed up your thinking is by using mental frameworks. A framework is simply a structure your brain can use to organize ideas. Instead of starting from scratch every time you speak, frameworks give your mind a familiar pattern to follow. Think of it like using templates. Imagine writing a document without any format. You would need to decide everything from scratch. Where the title goes, how to organize the paragraphs, how to structure the ideas. That would take a long time. But when you use a template, everything becomes easier. Your brain works the same way. When you use frameworks like the 3-2-1 speaking trick, your mind doesn't have to invent structure every time. It simply fills the structure with ideas. This dramatically speeds up thinking. Instead of asking, "What should I say?" your brain asks, "What are the 3 key ideas?" And suddenly the answer becomes clearer. Technique 1. Slow down to think faster. This may sound surprising, but one of the best ways to think faster is to slow down slightly before speaking. Many people rush to respond the moment a question is asked. But this actually makes thinking harder. When you rush, your brain feels pressured to produce words immediately, even if your thoughts are not ready yet. That pressure creates confusion. Instead, train yourself to pause briefly before answering. Even 1 or 2 seconds is enough. During that pause, your brain organizes ideas. The pause might feel longer to you than it actually is. But to the listener, it simply looks like you are thinking carefully. And thoughtful pauses create an impression of confidence. Great communicators use this technique constantly. They understand that a short pause leads to a stronger response. Technique 2. Focus on the main idea first. Another powerful way to think faster is to focus on the main idea first. When someone asks a question, your brain may generate many possible thoughts. Trying to process all of them at once creates mental clutter. Instead, train yourself to identify the most important idea immediately. Ask yourself one quick mental question. What is the main point? Once the main point is clear, supporting ideas become easier to organize. For example, imagine someone asks, "Why do you think this strategy will work?" Instead of searching through every possible detail, focus on the core idea first. Perhaps the main point is, the strategy works because it targets the right audience. Now your explanation has direction. You can then add supporting points if needed. Starting with the main idea prevents your mind from wandering. Technique 3. Practice quick thinking exercises. Just like physical exercise strengthens the body, mental exercise strengthens your thinking speed. Here is a simple exercise you can practice daily. Choose any everyday topic. For example, A movie you watched, a book you read, a project you're working on, a conversation you had. Now challenge yourself to summarize it using 3 ideas in 10 seconds. For example, 3 things I liked about the movie were the story, the acting, and the music. This exercise trains your brain to quickly identify key ideas. Over time, your mind becomes faster at organizing information automatically. Technique 4. Limit your ideas. Many people struggle to think quickly because they try to include too many ideas. When your brain attempts to process everything at once, it becomes overloaded. But when you limit the number of ideas, thinking becomes easier. This is why the 3-point structure is so powerful. Instead of asking yourself, "What should I say?" you ask, "What are the 3 most important ideas?" This simple limitation removes unnecessary mental pressure. Your brain stops searching endlessly and begins prioritizing. Limiting ideas creates clarity, and clarity speeds up thinking. Technique 5. Use visual thinking. Another powerful method for faster thinking is visualization. Your brain processes images faster than words. So when you imagine ideas visually, your mind organizes information more efficiently. For example, when someone asks about a project, instead of thinking about long sentences, imagine 3 boxes in your mind. Each box represents one idea. Box 1, problem. Box 2, solution. Box 3, result. Now you simply fill the boxes with ideas. This mental picture helps you structure information quickly. Visual thinking is especially useful in presentations, explanations, and problem-solving discussions. Technique 6. Ask clarifying questions. Sometimes thinking feels slow because the question itself is unclear. Instead of forcing an immediate answer, you can ask a quick clarifying question. For example, are you asking about the timeline or the strategy? This does 2 helpful things. First, it gives your brain extra time to think. Second, it ensures you understand the question correctly. Many people feel pressure to answer immediately. But asking a thoughtful question often leads to a better conversation. And it gives your mind time to organize ideas. The role of practice. Thinking faster is not a talent you either have or don't have. It is a skill that improves with repetition. The more often you practice organizing ideas quickly, the faster your brain becomes. At first, the process may feel deliberate. You may consciously think about the 3-2-1 structure before answering. But over time, it becomes automatic. Your brain begins recognizing patterns. When someone asks a question, your mind naturally searches for key ideas. Instead of scrambling for words, your thoughts appear in structured form. And structured thoughts lead to structured communication, turning quick thinking into clear speaking. Fast thinking alone is not enough. The real goal is organized thinking. When your thoughts are structured, speaking becomes easier. You no longer need to search for words while talking. You already know the direction of your message. This is where the 3-2-1 speaking method becomes incredibly powerful. It provides a mental framework your brain can use instantly. When someone asks a question, your mind quickly identifies 3 key ideas, 2 supporting details, 1 clear message. That structure transforms scattered thoughts into clear communication. A small habit that changes conversations. Let's return to something simple but powerful. The pause. That small moment before you speak is where thinking happens. Instead of rushing to fill silence, use that moment intentionally. During the pause, your brain can ask, "What are the 3 key ideas?" This small habit can completely change how you communicate. Your responses become clearer. Your explanations become shorter. Your confidence grows. And conversations become easier. The beginning of mental clarity. Training your brain to think faster is not about speed alone. It's about developing mental clarity. When your mind becomes organized, your words become organized. When your thoughts become structured, your communication becomes powerful. And when you combine quick thinking with the 3-2-1 speaking method, something remarkable happens. You stop rambling. You stop searching for words in the middle of sentences. You begin expressing ideas with clarity and confidence. But thinking quickly is only part of the skill. The next step is learning how to structure your thoughts in seconds, even in the middle of a conversation. In the next chapter, you will learn simple mental frameworks that help you organize ideas instantly so that your message always feels clear, focused, and easy to understand. Chapter 5. Structuring your thoughts in seconds. Imagine someone asking you a question and, within a few seconds, you already know exactly how you're going to answer. Your thoughts are organized. Your explanation is clear. You deliver your point confidently without rambling, repeating yourself, or getting lost halfway through your sentence. For many people, this ability feels almost magical. They wonder how some people always seem to have clear, structured answers ready in conversations, meetings, and presentations. But the truth is much simpler. Those people aren't necessarily smarter. They simply know how to structure their thoughts quickly. And once you learn a few simple mental frameworks, you can do the same. In this chapter, you'll learn practical ways to organize your ideas in seconds so your communication becomes clear, focused, and powerful. Why structure makes communication easier. Think of structure as the skeleton of communication. Without a skeleton, the body collapses. Without structure, ideas collapse too. When people ramble, it's usually because their ideas are floating around without any order. They start speaking before deciding. What comes first, what comes next, what the final point should be. As a result, their explanation becomes messy. They jump from idea to idea. They repeat themselves. They add details that confuse the listener. But when your ideas follow a simple structure, everything changes. Your thoughts flow naturally. Your listener can follow your explanation easily. And your message becomes memorable. Structure gives direction to your words. The power of simple frameworks. One of the fastest ways to structure your thoughts is by using simple mental frameworks. A framework is a pattern your brain can use to organize information. Instead of inventing a new structure every time you speak, you rely on familiar patterns. These patterns act like shortcuts for your brain. They allow you to organize ideas quickly, even in the middle of a conversation. In this chapter, you'll learn several frameworks that work perfectly with the 3-2-1 speaking method. These frameworks will help you structure almost any explanation within seconds. Framework 1. The 3-point structure. The simplest and most powerful framework is the 3-point structure. You've already seen how powerful 3 ideas can be. The human brain naturally remembers information presented in groups of 3. That's why you see this pattern everywhere. Beginning, middle, end. Past, present, future. Problem, solution, result. 3 points create balance. They feel complete without overwhelming the listener. Whenever someone asks a question, train your brain to think in 3 ideas. For example, imagine someone asks, "What makes a good leader?" Instead of giving a long explanation, you might say, "A good leader does 3 things. They communicate clearly, they make decisions confidently, and they support their team." That structure instantly makes your explanation clearer. Once the 3 ideas are stated, you can briefly explain each one if needed. But the listener already understands your message. Framework 2. Problem, solution, result. Another powerful framework is problem, solution, result. This structure works especially well when explaining ideas, strategies, or improvements. It follows a natural storytelling pattern that people understand easily. First, you describe the problem. Second, you explain the solution. Third, you describe the result. For example, imagine explaining a change at work. Instead of rambling, you could say, "We noticed that customer response times were slow. So we introduced a new support system that organizes requests more efficiently. As a result, our response time improved significantly." Clear, logical, easy to follow. This framework works in business discussions, presentations, and everyday conversations. It gives your explanation a clear direction from beginning to end. Framework 3. Past, present, future. Sometimes people ask questions that involve progress or change. In those situations, the past, present, future structure works extremely well. It helps you explain how something evolved and where it is going. For example, imagine someone asking, "How has your project developed?" You could respond like this. In the past, we were focused mainly on research and planning. Right now, we're actively building the product and testing it with users. In the future, we plan to launch it publicly and expand to new markets. This structure naturally organizes your explanation. The listener can easily understand the timeline. And because the ideas follow a logical sequence, your message feels clear and organized. Framework 4. Idea, example, insight. Sometimes you need to explain an idea clearly. In those situations, the idea, example, insight structure works very well. First, you state the idea. Second, you give a simple example. Third, you explain the insight or lesson. For example, one important communication skill is pausing before speaking. For example, when someone asks a question in a meeting, taking just 2 seconds to think can help you organize your answer. That small pause often leads to a clearer and more confident response. This structure works particularly well when teaching concepts or explaining lessons. It helps listeners understand both the idea and its real-world application. Framework 5. Compare and contrast. Another powerful way to structure thoughts is by comparing two ideas. Comparison creates clarity because it highlights differences. For example, imagine explaining the difference between rambling and clear speaking. You might say, rambling happens when someone starts speaking before organizing their thoughts. Clear speaking happens when someone briefly organizes their ideas before responding. The contrast makes the idea easy to understand. This framework works well when explaining options, strategies, or opinions. It allows you to highlight strengths and weaknesses quickly. How to choose the right framework. At first, you might wonder which framework to use in each situation. But with practice, your brain will begin choosing automatically. Different types of questions naturally fit different structures. If someone asks about improvement, problem, solution, result works well. If someone asks about progress, past, present, future works well. If someone asks about lessons or ideas, idea, example, insight works well. And if you're simply sharing opinions or observations, the three-point structure is always reliable. The key is not memorizing every framework perfectly. The key is recognizing that structure makes thinking easier. Turning frameworks into habits. At first, structuring your thoughts may require conscious effort. You might need to pause and think about which framework fits the situation. But with practice, the process becomes automatic. Your brain begins recognizing patterns. When someone asks a question, your mind quickly organizes ideas into a structure. Instead of feeling pressure to speak immediately, you feel clarity. Your explanation flows naturally, and you rarely feel the urge to ramble. A simple daily exercise. Here is a powerful exercise you can practice every day. Choose a simple topic and explain it using one of the frameworks. For example, you might practice explaining why you enjoyed a book, what you learned from a meeting, what you think about a recent idea. Try structuring your explanation in 3 points, or use problem, solution, result. The goal is to train your brain to organize ideas quickly. Even practicing for a few minutes a day can dramatically improve your communication over time. Why structure builds confidence. When your thoughts are organized, something interesting happens. Your confidence increases. You feel less pressure to search for words. You feel less fear of losing your point. You know where your explanation is going. That clarity creates calmness. And calmness improves communication. Instead of speaking quickly out of nervousness, you speak with purpose. Instead of over-explaining, you focus on what matters. Your message becomes stronger because it is clear. Combining structure with the 3-2-1 method. Now let's connect everything you've learned so far. The 3-2-1 speaking trick gives you a simple structure. 3 ideas. 2 supporting points. 1 clear message. The frameworks in this chapter help you organize those ideas quickly. Together, they create a powerful communication system. When someone asks a question, your mind quickly does 3 things. First, it identifies the key ideas. Second, it organizes those ideas into a structure. Third, it delivers the message clearly. This entire process can happen in just a few seconds. And once you develop this habit, your communication begins to feel effortless. The difference clear structure makes. Think about two different speakers in a meeting. The first speaker begins talking immediately. Their explanation jumps between ideas. They add unnecessary details. Eventually, people lose track of the message. The second speaker pauses briefly. Then they say, "There are 3 things we should focus on." Immediately, the room becomes more attentive. Why? Because structure signals clarity. It tells the listener that the explanation will be organized. And people naturally prefer organized information, a skill that improves every conversation. The ability to structure thoughts quickly is one of the most valuable communication skills you can develop. It helps in professional situations like meetings and presentations. It helps in personal conversations where you want to express ideas clearly. It even helps when explaining simple opinions or stories. Structured thinking turns complex ideas into clear messages. And clear messages create understanding. Preparing for the next step. At this point, you now have several powerful tools. You understand why people ramble. You know how clear thinking leads to clear speaking. You've learned the 3-2-1 speaking trick. You've practiced training your brain to think faster. And you've learned simple frameworks for structuring ideas in seconds. Now it's time to focus on another important part of communication: speaking with confidence and precision. In the next chapter, you will learn how to deliver your ideas clearly without over-explaining, hesitating, or losing your audience's attention. Because once your thinking becomes structured, the final step is learning how to express those ideas with calm confidence and powerful clarity. Chapter 6. Speaking with confidence and precision. Have you ever listened to someone speak and thought, "That person sounds incredibly confident"? Not because they were loud, not because they used complicated words, but because everything they said sounded clear, direct, and intentional. Their ideas were easy to follow. Their sentences were simple and precise. They didn't rush. They didn't ramble. They didn't try to impress anyone with unnecessary explanations. They simply communicated their message with clarity. That is the power of speaking with confidence and precision. And here's something important to understand. Confidence in speaking does not come from personality. It comes from clarity of thought and control of your message. Once your ideas are organized, the next step is learning how to deliver them in a way that sounds calm, clear, and persuasive. In this chapter, you will learn practical techniques that help you express ideas confidently without over-explaining, hesitating, or losing your listener's attention. What confident speakers do differently. Many people assume confident speakers are simply more outgoing. But confidence in communication usually comes from a few simple habits. Confident speakers tend to think briefly before speaking, use simple, clear sentences, focus on their main point, avoid unnecessary words, speak at a steady pace. These habits make their communication feel intentional. Instead of sounding uncertain, they sound decisive. Instead of sounding scattered, they sound organized. And these habits are skills anyone can develop. The problem of over-explaining. One of the biggest obstacles to confident communication is over-explaining. Over-explaining happens when people try to include too much information. They worry that their message might not be clear enough, so they keep adding more details. But instead of improving the explanation, this often makes it worse. Imagine someone asking a simple question like, "Why did the project take longer than expected?" A rambling answer might sound like this: "Well, there were several things that happened during the process, and we had some technical challenges, and the team also had to adjust the strategy, and there were a few scheduling issues." By the time the explanation ends, the listener is confused. Now imagine a more precise answer. "The project took longer because we faced 2 issues, technical challenges and scheduling delays." Clear, direct, easy to understand. Precise communication removes unnecessary information and focuses on the most important ideas. The power of fewer words. Many people believe that speaking more makes them sound more intelligent or knowledgeable. But great communicators understand something powerful. Clarity is more persuasive than quantity. When your message is clear, you don't need many words. In fact, shorter explanations often sound stronger. Compare these two responses. Response 1. I think there are a variety of different factors that could potentially influence the success of the project moving forward. Response 2. I think 2 factors will determine the project's success. The second response sounds far more confident, not because the speaker knows more, but because the message is clear and direct. Precision makes communication powerful. Removing filler words. Another common habit that weakens communication is the use of filler words. Filler words include phrases like, you know, kind of, sort of, basically, I think maybe. These words usually appear when someone is thinking while speaking. They act like verbal placeholders while the brain searches for ideas. But too many filler words make a speaker sound uncertain. For example, I think maybe we could sort of try a different approach. Now compare it to this. We should try a different approach. The second version is clear and confident. Reducing filler words improves the precision of your communication. And the best way to reduce them is simple. Pause instead of filling space with extra words. A brief pause always sounds more confident than unnecessary fillers. Speaking at the right pace. Confidence is also reflected in the pace of your speech. When people feel nervous, they often speak too quickly. They rush through sentences. Their ideas blur together. Listeners struggle to follow the message. Confident speakers usually do the opposite. They speak at a steady pace. They allow space between ideas. They give listeners time to process what they are saying. Slowing down slightly makes your message easier to understand. And it also signals calmness and control. Remember, communication is not a race. Your goal is not to finish speaking quickly. Your goal is to be understood. Emphasizing key points. Another technique confident speakers use is emphasis. Instead of delivering every sentence in the same tone, they highlight important ideas. They might pause before a key point. They might slow down slightly. They might repeat a critical idea for clarity. For example, there are 3 things that matter in this situation. Pause. Timing, preparation, and clear communication. That brief pause creates emphasis. It signals to the listener that something important is coming. Strategic pauses and emphasis make your message more memorable. The confidence of clear structure. By now you've learned the 3-2-1 speaking trick and several frameworks for organizing ideas. Those tools already give you a huge advantage. Because one of the biggest sources of speaking anxiety is uncertainty. When you don't know what you're going to say, you feel nervous. You hesitate. You over-explain. But when your ideas are structured, everything becomes easier. You already know your 3 key ideas. You already know your main message. Now speaking becomes a matter of delivery, not discovery. And that clarity creates natural confidence. Handling questions with confidence. Many people feel especially nervous when answering questions. Questions feel unpredictable. You might worry about giving the wrong answer. But the techniques you've learned make answering questions much easier. When someone asks a question, follow a simple process. Pause briefly. Identify the main idea. Structure your response. For example, imagine someone asking, "What are the biggest challenges facing our team?" Instead of answering immediately, pause for a moment. Then structure your response. There are 3 main challenges: limited resources, tight deadlines, and communication gaps. Clear, confident, organized. Even if you expand on each point afterward, the listener already understands your message. Confidence without perfection. It's important to remember that confident communication does not require perfect speaking. Everyone occasionally searches for words. Everyone sometimes pauses to think. Confidence comes from clarity and intention, not perfection. In fact, trying to sound perfect often creates more pressure. Great communicators focus on something much simpler: delivering their message clearly. If the message is clear, the communication is successful. Practicing precision. One of the best ways to develop precision in speaking is to practice summarizing ideas. Choose a topic and challenge yourself to explain it in one clear sentence. For example, summarize a book you read. Explain a lesson you learned. Describe a project you're working on. Limiting yourself to one sentence forces your brain to identify the most important idea. Once you can say the main point clearly, you can expand if necessary. But the core message remains strong. The role of body language. Confidence in speaking is not only about words. Body language also communicates confidence. Simple habits can make a big difference. Stand or sit upright. Maintain natural eye contact. Avoid fidgeting or excessive movement. Use natural gestures to emphasize ideas. These small adjustments reinforce the clarity of your message. When your body language and words align, your communication feels stronger. The listener's perspective. When trying to improve communication, it helps to think from the listener's perspective. Listeners want three things: clarity, simplicity, direction. They want to understand your point quickly. They want to follow your explanation easily. And they want to know why the message matters. Speaking with precision gives listeners exactly what they need. It respects their attention. And when people feel that their attention is respected, they listen more closely. A powerful communication habit. Here is a simple habit that dramatically improves communication. Before finishing your explanation, ask yourself, is my message clear? If the answer is yes, stop speaking. You do not need to add more words. You do not need to repeat the same idea 5 times. Once the message is clear, your job is done. This habit prevents over-explaining. It keeps your communication focused, and it strengthens your confidence as a speaker. The strength of clear expression. At this point in your journey, you've developed several powerful skills. You understand why people ramble. You know how clear thinking leads to clear speaking. You've learned the 3-2-1 speaking trick. You've practiced thinking faster and structuring ideas quickly. And now you've learned how to deliver your message with confidence and precision. Together, these skills transform communication. You no longer need to struggle to find words. You no longer need to fill space with unnecessary explanations. Instead, you express ideas clearly and calmly. And people naturally respond to that clarity. But one final step remains. Communication is not only about techniques. It's also about applying those techniques in real life. In the next chapter, you will learn how to use the 3-2-1 speaking method in real conversations, in meetings, interviews, presentations, and everyday interactions. Because the true power of the system appears when you start using it in the moments that matter most. Chapter 7. Using the 3-2-1 trick in real conversations. Learning a communication method is one thing. Using it in real conversations is another. You might understand the 3-2-1 speaking trick perfectly when reading about it or practicing on your own. But the real test happens in everyday situations. When someone suddenly asks you a question, when you're in the middle of a meeting, or when you're trying to explain an idea clearly to someone else. Real conversations move quickly. People interrupt. Questions appear unexpectedly. In those moments, you don't have time to sit down and plan a speech. But this is exactly where the 3-2-1 method becomes powerful. Because the structure is simple, your brain can use it instantly, even in the middle of a conversation. In this chapter, you will learn how to apply the 3-2-1 method in the situations where clear communication matters most. Meetings, interviews, presentations, networking conversations, and everyday interactions. The secret to real-time communication. Before we look at specific situations, it's important to understand one key principle. Great communicators don't memorize perfect sentences. Instead, they rely on simple mental structures. Structures allow them to organize their thoughts quickly and adapt to the conversation. The 3-2-1 method gives you exactly that structure. Whenever you speak, your mind follows a simple pattern. 3 key ideas. 2 supporting points if needed. 1 clear message. This pattern acts like a guide. Even if the conversation moves quickly, you always know how to organize your response. Now let's see how this works in real life. Using the 3-2-1 method in meetings. Meetings are one of the most common places where people struggle to communicate clearly. Someone asks a question. Several people begin speaking. Ideas start flying around the room. And often, the discussion becomes messy and unfocused. But if you know how to organize your thoughts quickly, you can stand out immediately. Imagine someone asking, "What should our main priorities be next quarter?" Instead of speaking randomly, you pause briefly and apply the structure. 3 ideas. Then you say, "I think we should focus on 3 priorities next quarter: improving customer experience, expanding our marketing reach, and strengthening internal communication." Immediately, your response sounds organized. The room understands your point. And because your ideas are structured, people can discuss them more easily. Structured responses often make you appear more thoughtful and prepared, even if you organized your thoughts just seconds earlier. Leading discussions clearly. The 3-2-1 method also works when you're leading conversations. For example, imagine you're presenting an idea during a meeting. Instead of giving a long explanation, you begin with structure. For this project to succeed, we need to focus on 3 things. Pause. Clear goals, strong teamwork, and consistent progress tracking. That simple structure makes your explanation easier to follow. People know what to expect, and they can mentally organize the information as you speak. Structured communication naturally makes discussions more productive. Using the method in job interviews. Job interviews are another situation where clear communication is extremely valuable. Interviewers often ask open-ended questions such as, "Tell me about your strengths. What did you learn from your last project? How do you handle challenges at work?" Without structure, answers to these questions can easily become long and unfocused. But with the 3-2-1 method, your answers become clear and memorable. For example, "What are your strengths?" Instead of rambling, you might say, "I believe my 3 biggest strengths are clear communication, strong problem-solving, and staying calm under pressure." Then you briefly support each idea. This type of answer sounds confident and organized. And because it's structured, the interviewer can easily follow your explanation. Structured answers often leave a stronger impression than long, unorganized responses. Handling unexpected questions. One of the most stressful moments in communication is receiving an unexpected question. You might feel pressure to answer immediately. But remember something important. You are allowed to pause. In fact, pausing briefly makes your answer better. During that pause, your brain quickly identifies the 3 key ideas. Then you respond clearly. For example, imagine someone asking, "Why do you think this strategy will work?" Instead of rushing, pause for a moment. Then answer, "I think it will work for 3 reasons. It targets the right audience, it simplifies the message, and it focuses on long-term results." Now your explanation has direction. Even though the question was unexpected, your response feels structured. Using the method in presentations. Presentations become dramatically clearer when you use structured thinking. Instead of overwhelming your audience with information, you guide them through a few key ideas. For example, imagine presenting a proposal. Instead of giving a long introduction, you begin like this. This proposal focuses on 3 main goals. Pause. Increasing efficiency, improving customer experience, and reducing operational costs. That structure acts like a roadmap for your audience. They immediately understand the direction of your presentation. And when people understand the structure, they are more likely to remember the message. The rule of 3 works extremely well in presentations because it simplifies complex information. Everyday conversations. The 3-2-1 method is not just for professional situations. It also improves everyday conversations. Think about how often people ask simple questions like, "What did you think about the event? How was your trip? What did you learn from that book?" Without structure, answers to these questions can become long stories that lose focus. But with the 3-2-1 method, you can share ideas clearly. For example, "How was the trip?" You might say, "It was great for 3 reasons. The food was amazing, the city was beautiful, and the people were very friendly." Simple, clear, easy to understand. This structure keeps conversations engaging without overwhelming the listener. Networking conversations. Networking events often involve short conversations with new people. You may only have a few minutes to introduce yourself or explain what you do. In these moments, clarity is incredibly important. Imagine someone asking, "What kind of work do you do?" Instead of giving a long explanation, you could say, "I focus on 3 areas: helping teams communicate better, improving productivity systems, and training people to think more clearly." This answer is structured and memorable. It gives the listener a clear understanding of your work. And because it's simple, they can easily ask follow-up questions. Explaining ideas persuasively. Sometimes communication is not just about explaining ideas, it's about persuading others. Structure helps here as well. When people hear organized arguments, they find them easier to understand and evaluate. For example, imagine trying to convince a team to adopt a new strategy. Instead of giving a long explanation, you might say, "There are 3 reasons we should adopt this strategy." Then you explain those reasons clearly. Structured arguments feel stronger because they follow a logical pattern. The listener can follow your reasoning step by step. Listening improves speaking. There is another important part of communication that often goes unnoticed. Listening. The better you listen, the easier it becomes to structure your responses. When you listen carefully, you understand the real question being asked. That clarity allows you to organize your answer more effectively. Many people are already thinking about their response while the other person is speaking. But great communicators do something different. They listen fully first. Then they structure their response. Listening gives your brain the information it needs to respond clearly, turning structure into a habit. At first, applying the 3-2-1 method in real conversations may require conscious effort. You might need to remind yourself to pause and organize your thoughts. But over time, the process becomes natural. Your brain begins to think in structured patterns automatically. When someone asks a question, your mind quickly identifies key ideas. Your responses become shorter, clearer, and more confident. And eventually, you stop thinking about the method entirely. It simply becomes the way you communicate. The confidence of clear communication. When you begin using the 3-2-1 method in real conversations, something powerful happens. You start feeling more confident. You know how to organize your ideas. You know how to answer questions clearly. You know how to express your thoughts without rambling. That confidence doesn't come from memorizing perfect sentences. It comes from having a reliable system. A system that works in meetings. A system that works in interviews. A system that works in presentations and everyday conversations. And the more you use it, the more natural it becomes. Preparing for the final step. At this point, you've learned the complete system. You understand why people ramble. You know how clear thinking leads to clear speaking. You've mastered the 3-2-1 speaking trick. You've trained your brain to think faster. You've learned how to structure ideas quickly. You've practiced speaking with confidence and precision. And now you've learned how to apply these skills in real conversations. But there is one final piece of the journey. When you consistently communicate with clarity, something bigger happens. Your confidence grows. Your influence increases. People begin to respect your ideas more. In the final chapter, we will explore how becoming a clear communicator can transform not only your conversations, but also your opportunities, relationships, and personal success. Let's continue to the final step. Chapter 8. Becoming a clear and powerful communicator. Think about the people you admire most when it comes to communication. They might be great leaders, inspiring teachers, successful entrepreneurs, or simply individuals who always seem to express their thoughts clearly and confidently. When these people speak, something is different. Their ideas feel organized. Their message is easy to understand. They don't ramble, over-explain, or lose their point halfway through a sentence. Instead, their communication feels calm, focused, and intentional. And because of that clarity, people listen to them. People trust them. People respect their ideas. This is the power of becoming a clear and powerful communicator. It's not about having the loudest voice in the room. It's not about speaking the longest. And it's definitely not about using complicated language. It's about something much simpler and much more powerful. Clarity of thought and clarity of expression. In this final chapter, we'll explore how mastering clear communication can transform your confidence, your influence, and the opportunities available to you in life. Why clear communication creates influence. Communication is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Almost every opportunity in life involves communicating ideas to other people. You communicate in job interviews. You communicate in meetings. You communicate when building relationships. You communicate when sharing ideas, solving problems, and making decisions. When your communication is unclear, your ideas may never reach their full potential. But when your communication is clear, people understand your message quickly. And understanding leads to influence. Imagine two people presenting the same idea. One person explains it in a long, confusing way. The other person explains it in a clear, structured way. Which person will people trust more? Which person will people remember? Which person will people follow? Clarity creates influence because it makes ideas accessible. When people understand your message, they can engage with it. The confidence that comes from clarity. Many people believe confidence comes first. They think confident people speak clearly because they already believe in themselves. But often the opposite is true. Confidence grows from clarity. When your thoughts are organized, you feel more certain about what you're saying. You're not searching for ideas while speaking. You're not worried about losing your point. You know exactly what you want to communicate. That certainty naturally increases confidence. You begin speaking with calmness instead of hesitation. You focus on expressing ideas rather than worrying about how you sound. And over time, that confidence becomes part of your communication style. The respect of clear thinkers. There is another important benefit of clear communication. People begin to see you as a clear thinker. When someone consistently expresses ideas in an organized way, others assume that person thinks clearly as well. This perception can have a powerful impact on how people treat you. Clear communicators are often viewed as thoughtful, competent, reliable, capable of leadership. Even when discussing complex topics, they make ideas feel understandable. This ability creates trust. And trust is one of the most valuable forms of influence. Simplicity is a strength. Many people make the mistake of thinking that complicated explanations sound more impressive. But great communicators know something important. Simplicity is not a weakness. It is a strength. When you can explain an idea simply, it means you truly understand it. Complex language often hides confusion. Clear language reveals understanding. Think about the most powerful speeches you've ever heard. They were rarely filled with complicated words. They were clear, direct, and easy to follow. That clarity allowed the message to reach people emotionally and intellectually. Your goal as a communicator is not to impress people with vocabulary. Your goal is to help people understand your ideas. The long-term impact of better communication. Improving your communication skills doesn't just affect one conversation. It changes how you interact with people in every area of life. At work, clear communication helps you share ideas more effectively. It allows you to contribute in meetings and explain strategies clearly. In leadership roles, it helps you guide teams and inspire action. In personal relationships, it helps you express thoughts and feelings more honestly and respectfully. Clear communication reduces misunderstandings. It strengthens connections. And it allows your true ideas to be heard. The habit that changes everything. Throughout this audiobook, one small habit has appeared again and again. The pause. Before speaking, take a moment to think. That pause may only last 1 or 2 seconds, but it allows your brain to organize ideas. Instead of speaking automatically, you speak intentionally. During that pause, your mind can apply the 3-2-1 method. 3 key ideas. 2 supporting points if needed. 1 clear message. This habit transforms communication. It prevents rambling before it begins. It turns scattered thoughts into structured explanations. And it gives your words direction. Consistency builds mastery. Like any skill, communication improves with practice. The more often you organize your thoughts before speaking, the easier it becomes. At first, you may need to remind yourself to pause. You may consciously think about the 3-2-1 structure. But over time, your brain begins doing it automatically. You naturally look for key ideas. You instinctively structure your responses. And conversations start feeling easier. Clarity becomes part of your thinking process. Your words shape opportunities. There is a powerful truth about communication. Your ideas can only create impact if people understand them. You might have brilliant insights. You might have creative solutions. You might have valuable perspectives. But if those ideas are buried under rambling explanations, they may never reach their full potential. Clear communication unlocks the value of your ideas. It allows others to see what you see. It allows your thoughts to influence decisions. And it opens doors to opportunities that unclear communication might close. Becoming the person people listen to. Imagine being in a room where people are discussing an important topic. Several voices are sharing opinions. The conversation feels chaotic. Then you speak. Your response is structured. Your ideas are clear. Your message is direct. Suddenly, the room becomes quiet. People listen. Why? Because clarity stands out. When someone speaks clearly in a world full of noise, people pay attention. Clear communicators become the people others turn to for insight. Their words carry weight. Their ideas move conversations forward. The ripple effect of clear thinking. Clear communication begins with clear thinking. And clear thinking has benefits far beyond speaking. When your mind learns to organize ideas, decision-making becomes easier. Problem-solving becomes more effective. Planning becomes more structured. You begin approaching challenges with clarity instead of confusion. In other words, the skills you've learned in this audiobook improve not only your communication, but also your thinking. And when your thinking improves, your entire life becomes more intentional. A daily practice for lifelong growth. To keep improving your communication, try this simple daily practice. At the end of each day, take a moment to reflect on something you learned or experienced. Then explain it to yourself using the 3-2-1 structure. 3 ideas. 2 supporting details. 1 key takeaway. This exercise trains your brain to organize thoughts consistently. Over time, structured thinking becomes second nature. And when structured thinking becomes natural, clear communication follows effortlessly. The real power of the 3-2-1 method. The 3-2-1 speaking trick may seem simple, but simplicity is exactly what makes it powerful. It gives your mind a reliable framework, a way to turn scattered thoughts into organized messages, a way to avoid rambling, a way to express ideas with clarity and confidence. And because the method is simple, you can use it anywhere. In conversations, in meetings, in interviews, in presentations, in everyday life. A new way of communicating. As you move forward, remember that communication is not about speaking more. It is about speaking clearly. It is about respecting the listener's time and attention. It is about delivering ideas in a way that people can easily understand. When you combine clear thinking with simple structure, your communication becomes powerful. You no longer feel the need to over-explain. You no longer feel pressure to fill every silence. Instead, your words become intentional. And intentional communication creates meaningful conversations. Your journey starts now. You now have the tools to transform the way you communicate. You understand why rambling happens. You know how clear thinking leads to clear speaking. You've learned the 3-2-1 speaking method. You've practiced thinking faster and structuring ideas quickly. You've learned how to speak with confidence and precision. And you know how to apply these skills in real conversations. Now the next step is simple. Practice. Every conversation is an opportunity to apply what you've learned. Pause. Organize your thoughts. Share your ideas clearly. Over time, the process will become natural. And one day, you'll notice something interesting. Speaking clearly will no longer feel like a technique. It will simply feel like the way you think. And when that happens, you won't just communicate better. You'll become the kind of person whose ideas are heard, understood, and remembered. That is the true power of thinking faster and speaking clearer. Conclusion. Speak with clarity. Think with confidence. Think back to the beginning of this audiobook. You started this journey with one simple goal: to stop rambling and learn how to speak clearly. Maybe you've experienced those frustrating moments when you had something important to say but struggled to express it. Maybe you've been in conversations where your thoughts felt scattered. Maybe you've started explaining an idea and realized halfway through that you had lost your point. Almost everyone experiences this at some point. It doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It doesn't mean your ideas aren't valuable. Most of the time, it simply means your thoughts were not organized before you started speaking. And that's the key lesson of this entire audiobook. Clear speaking begins with clear thinking. When your thoughts are organized, your words naturally become clearer. When your ideas have structure, your communication becomes easier to follow. And when people understand your message, they begin to respect your voice. The real reason people ramble. Throughout this audiobook, you've learned that rambling rarely comes from a lack of knowledge. In fact, many people ramble because they have too many thoughts, not too few. Their ideas are moving quickly. Their brain is trying to say everything at once. But without structure, those ideas collide. The result is long explanations, confusing sentences, and conversations that drift away from the original point. The solution is not to speak more. The solution is to organize your thinking. And that's exactly what the 3-2-1 speaking trick allows you to do. The power of the 3-2-1 method. The 3-2-1 method is powerful because it gives your brain a simple structure. Whenever you speak, you organize your ideas into 3 key points, 2 supporting details if needed, 1 clear message. This structure prevents your thoughts from becoming scattered. Instead of saying everything that comes to mind, you focus on the ideas that matter most. And when your ideas are focused, your message becomes stronger. The beauty of the 3-2-1 method is its simplicity. It works in meetings. It works in conversations. It works in interviews, presentations, and everyday life. You don't need complicated communication techniques. You only need a simple system that helps your brain organize ideas quickly. The habit that changes communication. There is one small habit that makes everything in this audiobook work. The pause. Before you speak, take a brief moment to think. That pause might last 1 second, maybe 2. But in that moment, your mind organizes your ideas. Instead of reacting automatically, you respond intentionally. That pause creates clarity. It turns rushed thoughts into structured communication. And the more you practice pausing before speaking, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, your brain will begin organizing ideas automatically. Clear communication builds confidence. Something interesting happens when you start communicating clearly. Your confidence grows. Not because you suddenly become louder or more outgoing, but because you know how to express your ideas. You trust your ability to organize your thoughts. You trust your ability to explain things clearly. And that trust removes a lot of the anxiety people feel during conversations. Instead of worrying about what to say, you focus on sharing your message. Confidence grows naturally when clarity becomes part of your thinking process. Your ideas deserve to be heard. Every person has ideas worth sharing. You have insights, experiences, and perspectives that no one else has. But ideas can only create impact when they are communicated clearly. Clear communication allows your thoughts to reach other people. It allows your ideas to influence decisions. It allows your voice to carry weight in conversations. In many ways, communication is the bridge between thinking and impact. Without that bridge, even great ideas remain hidden. But when you speak clearly, your ideas begin to travel. They reach people. They create understanding. And sometimes they create change. A skill that improves every area of life. Communication is one of the few skills that improves nearly every part of life. At work, it helps you explain ideas, solve problems, and collaborate with others. In leadership, it helps you guide teams and inspire action. In relationships, It helps you express thoughts and emotions honestly. Even in everyday conversations, clear communication makes interactions smoother and more enjoyable. When you speak clearly, people feel more comfortable engaging with you. Conversations become easier. Misunderstandings become less frequent. And your relationships become stronger. Keep practicing the structure. The key to mastering communication is practice. Every conversation is an opportunity to apply what you've learned. Whenever someone asks a question, remember the structure. Pause. Think of 3 key ideas. Deliver one clear message. The more you practice this process, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you won't even think about the technique. Your brain will automatically organize ideas in a structured way. Clarity will simply become the way you think and speak. A final thought. In a world full of noise, clarity stands out. Many people speak quickly without thinking. Many conversations are filled with scattered ideas and long explanations. But when someone speaks clearly, people notice. Clear communication signals confidence. It signals intelligence. It signals respect for the listener's time and attention. And that kind of communication has power. Your next conversation. The real test of everything you've learned begins with your next conversation. The next time someone asks you a question, pause. Take a breath. Organize your thoughts. Then share your ideas clearly. 3 ideas. 2 supporting points. 1 message. That simple structure can transform the way you communicate. And over time, it can transform the way people hear, understand, and remember your voice. Because when you learn to think faster and speak clearer, you don't just stop rambling. You become someone whose words are focused, confident, and meaningful. And that is a skill that will serve you for the rest of your life.